Hello, my name is Lucy Parsons and I'm a third-year propagation apprentice at the Dunedin Botanic Garden. I help care for a large selection of species there, which are all grown for the 7 different collections of the garden. I enjoy the challenge of working with such a wide variety of plants and love nurturing and watching them grow as they develop into maturity. I'm currently here at Appleton's Tree Nursery in Wakefield with Eric, and I'm going to interview him about field planting and seed collection of New Zealand natives. A little bit about young Eric, as he started the horticultural industry. The young and adventurous Eric travelled by motorbike to New Zealand from England in 1957. By the age of 23, Eric already had 2 years of forestry work and 2 years training at Linford Hall Forester Training School under his belt. Once in New Zealand, Eric was eager to continue his forest career. He first worked for the Forest Service at Woodhull, followed by 3 years with the Forest Research Institute. In 1960, he settled in Wakefield, where he worked for H. Bagent and Sons, is H. Bagent? Yep.
That's correct.
Limited, a private forestry and sawmilling company. There, Eric laid out the first boron trolls in Pinus radiata. This innovative work led to the widespread use of boron in the forestry industry today. Appleton's Tree Nursery began in 1968, where he primarily grew forestry seedlings and hardy ornamental trees. The nursery continued to grow, and so did the range of tree species. In 1993, 75 hectares was purchased to establish a seed orchard, arboretum and forestry trial area. Additional land was added into the year 2000, and to date about 65,000 ornamental trees covering 1,000 species have been planted, and seedlings have been grown from these seeds collected. So since Eric has just a little bit more experience than me, I'd better ask him some questions and learn a bit. So Eric, my first question for you, I don't know much about open ground nursery production, so what made you choose this particular site for an open ground nursery, and how was the soil originally prepared for an open ground operation?
Okay, it was originally a property that was the research farm for the Colton Institute in the 1950s. It went into private ownership in the 60s and was growing raspberries mainly at the time it came on the market in 1974. Our first job obviously was to roll up all the raspberries, get rid of them. And we gradually established pine crops here, increased the range of ornamentals, and we had opportunity to irrigate from the river, which we still are able to do today. One thing that became obvious, having had lots of rotary hoeing in amongst the raspberries, that the structure of the soil was beginning to deteriorate. So we used sawdust initially as a cover over our seed beds to help control weeds, and the sawdust over the 12 months gradually broke down, and then with the next rotary hoeing was incorporated into the soil. In later years we realised that we weren't getting quite enough humus back into the soil, so we started to compost pine bark, which was available from a sawmill locally, and we make about 10,000 cubic meters of composted pine bark every year now. And after every crop's harvested, we put on 3 or 4 centimeters of composted pine bark over each growing bed and that is fertilised rotary hoed in, and the soil is improving every year now. It's becoming a lot more crumbly, and that's the only reason that we've been able to stay on this property, because we've looked after the soil. That's the critical part. I've seen areas that have grown 3 cups of Pinus radiata, and then there's been so much root rot, people have to walk on the ground in the winter, which is pretty hard on the soil, and without any humus added, you're forced off that land, because it's just got so much more root rot in it that you have to move. Here on our nursery, root rot isn't a problem. We've put in plenty of humus over the years, and it really is quite a nice soil now. Basically, we're on an old riverbed soil, so it can be quite variable. Parts are sandy, other parts are heavier, and there's even parts which are quite rocky, and we've carted hundreds of tons of rocks off over the years too.
Right.
But we've got 16 hectares here, having acquired property on either side of the original property that we had here, and we are virtually continuously cropping with an interval of 6 months, with parts of the nursery left empty, because we've got to have empty ground ready to sow again in March and April. But yes, it's pretty well occupied all the year round.
Wow, good thorough answer, thank you. Okay, next is, please explain the process of the open ground method from planting the seedlings to exporting the finished product.
Okay, we are operating on the system of raised beds, just under a metre wide in the growing area of the bed, and the tractor tire marks remain in exactly the same place every year, so that we're not compacting the growing area by running the tractor over them. And everybody walks in those tractor alleyways, keeps off the bed to avoid compaction. So we raise our bed, the compost is already incorporated into that, the fertilizer has been incorporated already. We may sow broadcast by hand, or we may sow, if the seeds we're planting are relatively large, such as an acorn, we will roll out 3 or 4 drills in the bed with a simple roller with a polythene pipe in order to create 3 or 4 grooves. And the seed is coated with acrylic paint, to which has been added a fungicide and an insecticide to keep off birds or mice. These are usually hand planted accurately, and we have a skilled team of women who do an excellent, quick job. If we were doing thousands of meters of any species, then we could mechanize much more. And in fact, only our radiata pine and one or two other conifers are sown with an accurate vacuum drill, which will place them at 6 centimeters accurately up the drill. But for the 400 other species which we grow, and often only a few meters is planted, it's quicker to do it by hand.
Wow.
And
do they do that on the back of a tractor? Or?
no, handing over the bed,
Yeah.
walking on either side of the bed, planting acorns as they go. And after the acorns are planted, we mechanically cover with sawdust, and depending on the type of seed, how large it is, if it's an acorn, we can cover with 3 or 4 centimeters of sawdust by machine. If it's silver birch, which we've broadcast, then the covering's got to be really thin, so we actually do that by hand using a sieve in order to achieve that thin cover. Now, the sawdust cover is at risk of being blown away in the wind, so we then put an arch of cloth over the bed, and some of the beds are 150 meters long. We use Carolee hoops for the specific width of our bed, and the hailcloth which we use as the cover to keep the wind off and keep the birds out. In order to get the width that we required, we had to order 15 kilometers of cloth. And we recently had to order another 15 kilometers of cloth, so that's the amount that we cover each autumn and spring. So that will remain under the arch all winter, cold stratifying. So what we try to do is to copy what happens in nature. If the acorns come off the tree in the autumn, very often the acorn will quickly root in amongst the dry leaves. So those acorns are collected, coated with paint, sown, and a root will commence to come out over that cold winter period. As things begin to germinate in the spring, we can still get frost here. Our hardest frost in the winter can go down to minus 10 degrees. And as the trees are coming up in the spring, they are at risk from frost. So our irrigation system, which covers the whole nursery, can automatically come on when the temperature drops to plus 2.5, and it begins to cycle all around the nursery, taking 40 minutes to go right round, and having it so that it comes on ahead of the danger temperature. At least it gives a chance to get everything wet. And from then, if the temperature continues to drop, the hailcloth becomes an igloo of ice, and there can be 2 or 3 centimeters of ice on that hailcloth, so that underneath that isn't as cold as it is in the air outside.
Wow, so it acts as a shield.
That's right. So you've got these tunnels of cloth all covered in ice, and we switch off the water when the sun comes up.
So it's the igloo effect.
Yes, the igloo effect.
Ah.
And that really works well. Then we've got to make a judgment how quickly we can take that cloth off and begin to undercut our oaks, because the oak and a lot of other species grow a strong taproot down.
Yep.
It can be cut very easily when it's still soft. And so early November, end of October, early November, we take the cloths off. If we get a cold night, the water comes on still and coats the individual plants in ice.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's not below -6, things are fine. But we've had the odd occasion where it's been colder than that and we've lost the odd species. As nurserymen, we try to push the boundaries of how much we can grow, and sometimes we get caught. So we are putting a sharp reciprocating blade, which was developed in the forest industry, to undercut those plants. The blade is traveling sideways quite quickly on a short stroke. The blade is sharp, and you go under the bed, cut the roots, the plants hardly shake.
Wow.
And that encourages then, instead of just a single taproot, it encourages a whole host of side roots to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so the plants are beginning with a good root system, and from that stage on, it's a question of keeping them free of weed. We have a rule in the nursery that we don't allow any weed to flower. Now, obviously, the odd one escapes.
Good plan.
The odd one you miss. Obviously, you do. You can't get them all. But we find after 40 odd years that the ground is basically pretty clean, and we're dealing with weeds which are coming in the wind.
Wow.
Or carried in by a bird.
Mm-hmm.
So the weeding is done regularly, and we try to get everybody in the nursery out for a couple of hours in the cool of the morning to do the weeding, and then everybody goes on with their other jobs after that.
So
And
preferably handling rather than spray.
in the case of an ornamental nursery where you've got such a mix of species, we hand weed the growing area, but we do carefully spray on a calm morning the tractor alleyways, just to take some of the hard work out of it.
Sure.
And so we're keeping it as clean as we can. An insecticide and a fungicide spray is put over the whole nursery as a matter of routine, once a month usually, and that helps to keep control of aphids or caterpillars. But we don't use a lot of fungicides because we're conscious of the flora in the soil, the important mycorrhizal fungi. So we're trying to keep as green as we possibly can. And it's working pretty well. We also, years and years ago, grass grub larvae used to be a real problem, and one year we lost 50,000 Acer palmatum seedlings girdled. Everyone was girdled under the soil. So we have been able to work with a company locally which takes a pine bark compost and inoculates it with a particular bacterium, and we put that over our empty beds. It's rotary hoed in, and we find now that grass grub larvae is a very minor problem, and so that's really helped. Again, it all costs money, but either you spend it on a safe medium, which is going to incorporate some more humus in your soil, or you put on a harsh chemical. And the chemicals don't work really, and there's always the risk of your populations building a resistance to them anyway. Okay, so that heads us past Christmas into February, March. We can either wait until we get some heavy rains to begin some more undercutting, or as we did this year, we watered heavily and started an undercutting program with a high clear crawler tractor, which would have a clearance underneath it about that high, so your trees are beginning to get to those heights. And we come in with a rigid blade, which is also sharp, and that goes underneath and travels under every crop, gently rippling the soil as it goes, so you are aerating your soil, which encourages some more root growth. And what we're aiming to do is to get a hardy plant with a good fibrous root system, which is going to transplant well. Most of our emphasis, open ground over the years, has been with exotics, Totra, Kaikatea, Matai, can all be handled under this system as well. But most of your native species are broadleaf evergreens, which do not transplant well from an open ground situation. So any broadleaf evergreen in the native range is usually handled in a plug or a container.
Right.
And that's something else.
Okay.
So our crop has been undercut March, April. We will put that blade under perhaps 2 or 3 times as a method of hardening that autumn growth off, so that by the time we come to the middle to the end of May, the trees are naturally dropping their leaves, and we can start lifting. And the same high clear crawler tractor then has another implement hooked on the back, which again is a rigid blade, but behind the rigid blade are fingers which go up and down like this, gently under the crop, lifting it onto the top of the soil without any ripping of roots. And so all that root which we've created comes out of the ground gently and can be part of the plant which goes onto the customer. The plants are brought into the grading shed, are graded into 7 height grades, and where required, if the customer's got a diameter requirement, we will grade to diameter 2 if they want to for grafting or budding. So we we try to supply our customer with an even line of plants in the grade that they've ordered, and we generally achieve that.
Awesome. With the lifting process, are there certain days that you do not want to lift due to high winds or dry weather, or you can quite sufficiently keep the roots moist at that time out of the ground?
We virtually have to keep lifting every working day because we've got 30 graders in the grading shed, so we've got to keep trees up to them. Trees are lifted, put onto a transport tray behind the tractor, the covers put over them to keep them moist, and if there's any sign of dryness when they come into the holding area, the tray of trees will be given a spray with water. They're kept like that overnight and paraded as quickly as we can. But we are really conscious that roots must not dry out. Must not dry out. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you've been very thorough, thank you very much. We possibly have run out of time, I think.
Just
so
keep going.
Just have to close it up for now. So I'd just like to thank you very much for letting me come here and interview you. And you might have to make a second film. Okay.